Question I'm posing today is why physical and digital games are the same price and why getting physical games today seems so much more difficult or useless than in the past. In order to do this, first, I think we needed to discuss a little bit about digital and physical games. According to a BBC report, 90% of video games were sold digitally in 2022. I don't think anyone would disagree that digital downloads are much more convenient than physical games. You don't have to change out the discs or the cartridge if you want to play a different game. As long as you have it installed, you can just launch a game or launch a different game. However, with these digital games, they do take up a lot more space on your devices. But nowadays, you end up having to install the entire game off the disc to your device anyway, so it kind of negates that advantage. However, with a physical game, you own the game outright and can do whatever you want with it, whether it's sell it, put it on a shelf and play it again in 20 years, let a friend borrow it. Another advantage of physical game is that in theory, you don't have to download the games, especially if you're somewhere that has slow internet or bandwidth caps on your internet. I personally don't think internet service providers should be putting a cap on the bandwidth that you can use in a month, but that's a discussion for a different day. These days, where all these games require day one patches, constant updates, or they're treated as a live service, the advantages to physical games seems to be purely to put something on your shelf. But also, one day, when the big players do go out of business, the ability to still play a game when it's no longer hosted on a game store seems like an advantage. In March of 2023, the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS eShop was taken offline. This meant that it was no longer possible to make purchases in the eShop for the Wii U or the Nintendo 3DS. If you bought a game prior to the closure, they say that for now it should still be possible to re-download games and DLCs, but this might not always be the case if at some point in the future they decide they don't want to provide the ability to download the games anymore. This would mean that you either need to have all the games already downloaded or have physical copies of the games that you want to play. Speaking to having a physical copy on your shelf, some bigger games nowadays don't even have a disc inside the case. Modern Warfare 2, for example, came out last year with a disc that had 72 megabytes of data on it compared to the 55 or so gigabytes, depending on the platform that you're playing on, game had in total. The disc itself served pretty much to just prove that you owned the game and had nothing really on it. Similarly, Halo Infinite came out in 2021 and had a disc that didn't have the full playable game on it. This means that you can't even install the game offline. Halo Infinite requires an online DRM to even install the game, so having the disc seems like it's just purely an inconvenience to the gamer. More recently, it was announced that Starfield's standard version that you buy off the shelf will have a physical disc, but the more expensive editions, called the Premium and the Constellation editions, won't have discs and will simply have a game code. In fact, the Constellation edition will have a steelbook display case that you can display your game code in. 10 years from now, when somebody wants to play any of these games, they're going to have to be online to even install the game and then use their bandwidth for it on top of that. For those of you who are collectors and like to preserve video game history, video game developers are not making it very easy to do that. Yeah, makes sense, whatever. Just go digital and don't look back, some of you might be saying. Buying the digital game allows you to get a digital license to use the game, but you never actually ever own the game. Let's say something happens, you get hacked, and your Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, or Steam accounts get banned. You no longer have the rights to the game that you have bought, and your digital library could be completely gone. Here I'm assuming that being hacked is the reason that you got banned and not because you're being a jackass online. With physical games, there's a used market that you can buy or sell, and with older games, you can install them and play completely offline when you get the hit of nostalgia. You can also easily let your friends borrow a game so they can try it out, which you can't easily do with digital games. PC games, on the other hand, have been digital for numerous years now, so PC gamers don't even have a choice anymore. Soon enough, all games for all systems will end up being digital. That isn't the discussion here. What I really want to know is why digital games and physical games cost the same, and if it makes sense for them to cost the same. With physical games, you have to actually produce a physical good, which will cost money and require space in stores to sell them. And those stores have to make a profit too. Let's say, just for argument's sake, that a store gets $5 for every sale of a game. $5 plus the cost of printing the video game is going to eat into the profits of the video game. So to me, it makes sense for it to cost a bit more. With digital games, you don't have to worry about the stores. You don't have to worry about printing anything. So in my head, they should cost less. Now, an argument for them not costing less is that digital games require an infrastructure to store and distribute the game. Okay, but then shouldn't the physical copies cost even more, since games nowadays require that infrastructure anyway? As discussed before, Modern Warfare 2 and Halo Infinite don't even have the games on the disc. So in the modern world, this is a cost that is associated with both physical and digital games. It's not like with a physical game that you can get away from having this infrastructure because you still need to be able to push out those updates, bug fixes, or in the case of those games coming up, the game in its entirety. You don't actually have to produce anything. Why do they not cost less? With the digital games, you don't have to worry about the amount the physical storefront gets for the sale. And you don't even have to worry about the secondhand market because there isn't one with digital games. Since developers don't have to worry about a secondhand market with digital games, and they don't have to print the discs or share some revenue with the stores, they should actually be able to sell more copies of the game, since someone wouldn't be able to go into a GameStop and buy a used game for however much less. Shouldn't this savings also be reflected in the price that we buy? I mean, users aren't truly buying the game, but just the license to be able to play it on one account. With a physical game in a single household, let's just say, multiple accounts are going to be able to play that same exact game. So with a digital game, why do they not cost less? Now, there are certain library shares and things you can do with digital games, but that's not something that everyone's doing. One of the reasons the cost is not the same is because of price parity. Because the market has not gone completely digital, the thought is that if the price for physical games is, let's just say, $5 or $10 cheaper, stores would be unhappy and would completely stop stocking the games. The thought is then that if they stop stocking the physical games, they'll also stop stocking accessories, or even gaming consoles themselves, because gaming specific stores can't run a store just selling consoles and not any games. Also, console video game developers don't want to cut out physical copies completely, because then they'll isolate those markets where internet connectivity isn't great or internet infrastructure isn't the same as it is in a lot of the world. Okay, fine. That makes sense. But also, how about actually putting the entire game on the disc and having the game be complete when the game ships, so that the same people who don't have the infrastructure don't have to still end up downloading gigabytes of data on day one to actually play the game? So why are physical games the same price as digital? I have the option of actually owning a game versus a license that could be revoked at any point, and the price is exactly the same. I will buy mostly physical. There's still going to be games that I buy digitally because it's more convenient, but for the most part, I will buy physical. My gaming library at this point is probably 70-30 digital to physical, but I purposely bought the disc version of the PS5 and buy most of my Switch games physical because I want to be able to let my friends borrow games that they might otherwise skip, and also have the ability to just play them in the future without having to worry about the storefront. A lot of the games that I'm actually excited for, I'll end up buying physical. I feel like there's a decent value in getting the physical game, especially if I'm going to end up paying the same price for them. With that, why should games cost the same for digital and physical when you aren't actually buying the same product? A physical game that is loadable offline is something that I own for life, as opposed to a digital game that a license to play game and could in theory be revoked. When the zombie apocalypse comes and I no longer have internet, I can still play my physical games while digital games may not be available because people prioritize surviving against the zombies and took down all the servers. My argument here is that digital games should at least be a little bit cheaper than physical games. For the games I'm really looking forward to or really like, I probably will still buy the physical games, but I feel like the digital game should at least be a little cheaper since you aren't actually buying the same product. Honestly, I guess the best thing to do is just be a patient gamer and just wait for the new releases to become old, go on sale, buy them on a huge discount, whether it's physical or digital. I know I could do this, but I usually end up buying the game sooner rather than later and just increasing my backlog of games to play. What are your guys' thoughts? Do you guys buy mostly physical games, mostly digital games? Do you agree that digital games should be cheaper than physical games, or are you okay with the way things are now? If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe for more content like this, and maybe check out this video where I talk about how game developers don't care about you, the gamer.